So to start off, when we are in GP, if we want to see if Excel reports have been deployed, if you're in any module area page here, you might see in the navigation list something like Excel reports here. And if we see this, then we know that they've been deployed. If we don't see it, where we can go to deploy it is in administration under setup. So we're going to tools, setup. This is a system setup, and down here is reporting tools setup. Might get a little error message like me. Depending on your version of GP, it might not look quite the same, but we're looking essentially for a tab here for Excel reports. When we select it, it will give us a location of where our reports have been deployed. And down here at the bottom, it's going to indicate which companies have been deployed, which ones have not been. If you want to deploy reports for all the companies, you can just pick which ones that have not been and then hit the deploy reports button. It's pretty simple to get started. There are a lot of out-of-box reports. I happen to be in the financial tab here, and you can see that we have 36 records. So if I were working in SmartList and I was looking at something like account transactions, that's going to contain all of my transactions through the GL. This is going to be a lot of data. And working in a SmartList, it's great. I can do filtering, sorting, all sorts of things in there. I can export it out to Excel. One of the things I do like about SmartLists that I don't have the ability to do in the Excel Refreshable report is the ability to drill back on things. So in the case of account transactions, I could double click on a row and actually see the journal entry. But the amount of data that's actually in that report, if I wanted to export it out to Excel, it would take a really long time. And these reports, when they're already in Excel and I just need to refresh them, they will run significantly quicker. So I can either go to the location in that reporting tool setup to where the reports were deployed, and in that folder I'll see all of my existing reports, or under any of these area pages here, I can select Excel reports, go find the one I'm looking for, and double click on it to open, or I can also click on this drill back button here. When you open an Excel report from GP, we'll give you a little prompt. We can go ahead and enable it. And then it's going to ask us how we want to view our data. So in this case, I'm just going to say a table. I see all of my data. I'm going to go ahead and click on OK. So it takes a little while here for this to load. That prompt we got when we opened the Excel report, just so you're aware, there is a way you can turn that off. You can contact me for details if you like. Our report, if I scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see we have nearly 23,000 records in this Excel report. So we have a lot of data, and you can see as we go across, there's a lot of columns here as well. So we're going all the way from AA all the way out, column A to column DQ. There's a lot of information in here. And just like in a SmartList, we can go ahead and do some filtering. Anyone that's really familiar with Excel knows all the wonderful features it has. So with the data already in here, I can go ahead and create a pivot table. I can use slicers. I can do calculations. I can format my data exactly how I want. And if I save it, then I can actually just open up that saved copy and refresh it. So let's say I like this report, but you know what? It has way too much information. I can go ahead and delete a number of columns. You know, I like having a date on here, an account number, a debit, a credit. Maybe from here, I want to create a pivot table. So here I can say I want to summarize this with a pivot table in a new worksheet. And for this pivot table, I want to see account number, I want to see a debit amount, I want to see a credit amount, and maybe I want to have a filter on for a date. So I can go and actually specify a particular date if I want, or date range. So we'll go ahead and put a timeline on this. And I'm going to say, you know what, just for the month of, maybe not this year, for the month of June 2027, I want to see all of my transactions summarized. So I've got exactly what I want. If I go to File and save this, I can save it to a location. For now, maybe I'll just throw it to my desktop. And we'll just call this Webinar Wednesday. And the next time I actually want to access this, I can take it directly from the location where I have it saved. Enable my content, and on the data tab in my ribbon, I can go refresh. And refreshing it is going to go ahead and refresh everything here in my worksheet called Account Transactions. So you can already get an idea of just how powerful this is, how quickly it can actually get the data from GP and update it in Excel. So we've looked here at taking an existing one. I really like starting with canned reports, the out-of-box reports, and then tweaking them. But you certainly can create them from scratch. We'll take a look at that in just a minute. This is the network location where we had the reports deployed. So in this particular case, I've just gone into the TWOCA company. So we would have a folder for all of our different companies. And then within that folder, we'll see folders for all the different modules. So out of the box, you can see we have a lot of different reports. So this is in financial. We have quite a few. We have lots for inventory, tons for sales and purchasing. And some of these you might find you can use with your existing data. Others, something like maybe a sales dashboard, you might say, hey, yeah, it looks great, but we're going to have to actually tweak it a little bit for our business. But I do like it for giving you ideas on what it's capable of doing, and maybe giving you some ideas on how you might want to see your data. So certainly go and explore what is available to you out of the box. Let's say that we wanted to create a brand new Excel spreadsheet and link it. So we're not actually starting with an existing report. Here in the toolbar, I'm going to go to the data section in the ribbon, and I actually have to create a connection. So out of the box, Excel doesn't actually have that connection. I have to go and say I want to get some external data. So you can see I have a lot of options in here. I'm going to say from other sources, and because GP is all built on SQL, everything is stored in SQL tables, I'm going to say I want to get this data from a SQL server. I have to put in my server name, and from there it's going to ask me where my data actually resides. In this case, it resides in my TWOCA database. And when I select that database, it's then going to display all of my views, my SQL views, and my SQL tables. So everything in GP is stored in SQL tables, and SQL views are really just queries of those tables. So I might have some data that resides in multiple tables. In that case, I could create a join on those tables, or I could write a view that basically says, go and get this data from these tables and allow me to view it. So we looked at account transactions before. If I want to take that one here again, I can. You know what, I will do that. So we'll just select that one. I'm going to say next. I can give it a different name if I want. You know, this has the company and view name in it, so I kind of like it. It's pretty easy to understand what this data connection is. So I'm going to say finish. And I already have a file there. Do I want to replace it? Sure. I've obviously played with this data before. How do I want to view this data? As a table, as a pivot table, pivot chart. I'm just going to leave it as a table for now. And remember, we had thousands and thousands of records with a lot of data going across. That's all being returned to us in a matter of seconds. Now, this is great. I've created this connection here from scratch, but there's a lot of data, way more than what I actually need. So if I look and I say, hey, you know what, I only need these first 7 columns here. Another way I can do it, besides what we did in our first example, is in my actual data connection itself, I can go to the properties, and in this definition section, I can actually change what data I'm pulling. So I've pointed it to a view, but I have the option to say SQL as my command type. And when I do that, I can essentially type in the SQL query to get my data. Now, this might be something that you're not comfortable with. You have to certainly know some SQL language, but it is fairly easy once you play around with it a little bit. It's more a matter of finding where the data resides. So I'm just going to type in a few things. I'm going to say I want the journal entry, I want the transaction date, I want the account number, perhaps the debit amount, and credit amount. If I say OK to this, it's just going to ask me if I want to proceed, and I'll say yes. And what it's really doing here, it's refreshing this. Rather than pulling everything, it's now only pulling these 5 columns that I've asked for. I still have all of my rows of data, so maybe I want to put an additional filter on there. I can go then to my properties again under data connections, go into the definition, and maybe I'll apply a where clause here. We'll say account numbers equal to we'll pick the petty cash account. Shouldn't have too much activity in there. And we'll say OK. So now I have a lot less data than what I had before. I've got it filtered just for this account number. I could have left it how I had it before and used the filter this way, but the main benefit in doing it here at the actual definition level is I'm actually filtering that data before it even gets to Excel. So I'm not including all the extra information I don't need. Now, as far as security is concerned for SQL reports, or excuse me, for Excel reports, this is all based on SQL access. If you have the ability to get to that folder and you have access to the underlying data, then you can open up these reports. If you have access to the folder but you don't have access to the underlying data and you try to open up one of these reports, you're not actually going to see anything in it. So the actual security would be something we'll likely cover in a future webinar. If you do have questions on it, though, certainly reach out to a GP consultant here at Profit Business Group. So for those of you who don't feel like writing any SQL queries, you might feel more comfortable working in GP in something called SmartList Designer. So we go back to GP here for a moment. When you're in your SmartList, you can click this new button and we'll see that SmartList Designer opens. SmartList Designer allows us to create a brand new SmartList where we can actually have joins between tables, and it'll actually give us the query down at the bottom if we want. We also have the ability, once it's written, is to click this publish button, and that'll actually create an Excel report for us. So we're going to go ahead and create one right now. We'll just call this fixed assets with, let's say, net book value. So down here at the bottom I have a views section. I can expand my company views. Go and find one here for fixed assets. So in this case I want data from my fixed assets view. I have things like my asset ID, my suffix, description, maybe the class ID, acquisition date, quantity, status. One of the things that I don't have in here is the assets net book value. So that actually resides in my fixed asset book. If I expand fixed asset book in here and find my net book value, I've actually gone ahead and included it with my fixed assets data. So now it's all going to be in one SmartList. If you notice there's this little ellipsis here next to net book value. When you click on that, that's just letting us know that we can specify number of decimal places in here. Now because we are joining two different views, I have to go and create a relationship. So in this case, I'm going to say my fixed asset ID must be joined to my fixed asset book asset ID. There's some cases where you can click on the auto link and it will actually create it for you, but sometimes that doesn't work, just like what we just saw with that error message. So I'm going to go ahead and say join it on here. I think in my test company I don't have more than one suffix, so I should be good with this. I can go ahead and hit execute query at the top, and if we make this a little bit taller on our screen, you can see that we're getting some data down here at the bottom. So this is what our data would actually look like. Before I click on OK to save this, here in this SQL Query, this is actually displaying what the query, the SQL query, actually looks like. So while I can click on OK and create this new SmartList, if I wanted, I could actually use this tool strictly to get the actual query and then paste that into an Excel data connection using that SQL command type. We'll go ahead though and click OK. We're actually going to create this fixed assets with net book value. And here it is. You can see under our fixed assets folder, we have our fixed assets with net book value. From here, I can click publish. And what this will do is it'll actually create that Excel report for me. So if we drill back to all of our reports, remember we had all of our reports in this network drive. If we go to our fixed asset folder, we now see this new fixed assets with net book value, and we can open it up. Close this guy. Open it up, enable the content, and now we have it in Excel as a refreshable Excel report. So these are just some of the ways that you can create and use Excel reports. Again, I strongly advise that you go and look at all of the existing folders, the different reports you have available to you, play with them a little bit, and if you do have any questions regarding security or how you might go about deploying these if you encounter any error messages, certainly reach out to a GP consultant here.